you brought up The Witcher. We couldn't have had more Jordan news. Christmas came early news this week of the Witcher Netflix show being announced. Go ahead. The floor is yours, Jordan. You can go ahead and talk about this.
Yeah, so I don't actually want to make this conversation all about The Witcher, surprisingly enough. I will say this. I think that obviously it's well known on the show that I am a huge fan of The Witcher. Absolutely one of my favorite games of all time, and now it's getting a Netflix television show, totally, hopefully it'll be, R-rated, and it'll have the special effects that it deserves. I think Netflix or HBO are the two perfect places for this, and obviously with HBO coming off of Game of Thrones, probably wouldn't be the best idea to hop it right into The Witcher. So I think this is literally my fucking dream happening right now as far as an adaptation for The Witcher, because I did not want a movie series, guys. I really didn't, because all that's gonna be is, all right, we're fucking adapting The Last Witch, a collection of short stories that are, loosely connected to each other throughout Geralt of Rivia's early days as a Witcher. And then we're going to have these, this mainstream audience get really deep into this, like, super dark fantasy world that's actually just reflecting our world with fantasy characters and elements in it. And then, yeah, it's just going to be like, Ghost in the Shell or any of these other franchises that start to get off the ground, but they're not mainstream enough, and then they can't get the second movie made, and then it's just a fucking shit show. And so I think this is the perfect situation, especially since you're going to be able to just hop into the episodes whenever you want and watch them at your own pace. And I think this will be great for whichever way they try to adapt, whether it's book by book or story by story, chapter by chapter, I don't know, but I just think that this is the perfect situation for The Witcher to be adapted, besides the adaptation that's already been the video games. So, yeah, I just wanted to say that as far as this is like perfect.
I have a couple of questions for you before we get into you.
Sure.
With this. First, do we know if this is going to be animated or live action?
No.
So that's a big question. The production company itself is a CG animation company, which means that they, probably do 3D CG, like something like Kingsglaive, Final Fantasy, but they probably also just do a lot of 3D effects for movies, and, particle effects, stuff like that. So what I'm thinking is, either it's going to be live action and they're just going to be, really fucking good at the special effects and all the different supernatural elements that you'll see on screen, because that's their forte, or it's just going to be a 3D CG series, kind of like Final Fantasy Kingsglaive, and I'm totally fucking down with that, because that's basically a Netflix series, Witcher Blur special is what it is. Is like, if you just imagine the Blur making a Netflix series for The Witcher, that's what that is. And so I'm totally down with that either way, but we do not have any confirmation to answer
even that trailer, that trailer for Witcher 3, the CG one, that would be cool. Just that style. Right. Oh, man.
Yeah, the one, if you guys, I don't know if this is one you're talking about, because there are several of those, Jared, but if you guys want to look up Killing Monsters, the Witcher 3 trailer is, and I'm almost positive that was done by Blur itself, so fucking dope shit. And yeah, if that was how they did it, I could already just see that being an amazing TV series.
That's going to be a tough question for them to answer, I think, because especially coming off of The Walking Dead and even in Game of Thrones, I could see the strings behind some of their CG, right? Like with the dragons.
Right. Oh my gosh, when fucking Daenerys hops on her dragon, it looks awful. Right. Every time.
But why that's disheartening is because those two shows are going to have a way bigger budget than this Witcher Netflix series, right?
Right.
So that's why I think they really got to be careful. I think I'm with you, and I'd prefer if they just went full animated.
Oh, 100%. With a lot of the stuff in Witcher, like, I think that CG will go through it's either going to look, they're going to have to spend their money somewhere, So it's going to be like either the CG is going to look dope, but they're going to lose money elsewhere. And I would rather have it be the motion graphics or animated type thing, because you get the most out of the creatures, you get the most out of the characters, you get the most out of the settings. when it comes to live action, you're gonna be if you put money into one thing, you're gonna lose money in another. So do you want the monsters to look badass, but you can't go to that many settings, or it's a tricky road.
Or you get shit actors.
Yeah, exactly. You're gonna lose money somewhere.
Yeah, if it is Kingsglaive style CG, then I am totally fine with that because they just don't have any bounds at that point. They can do everything that they would want to do to adapt the book. However, on the flip side, I would love to see a proper live action adaptation of The Witcher because the Polish stuff, from all accounts, is not very good. So,
also,
either way, I think it could work, and I do think that the Witcher series and the world of the Witchers is very magical, but it's not so soaked in magic that it's around every single fucking corner, and that, I don't think it would be impossible for them to do, I guess is what I'm saying. And also, I just think that, like, there's lower budget shows. Outcast on Cinemax, for example, has way better effects than Game of Thrones on HBO.
Okay. And so it can be done.
It absolutely can be done on a way smaller budget, I think. I think there's plenty of indie films out there that have way better CG than Game of Thrones and have way smaller budgets.
Also, with the budget thing, think about this. The reason those dragons probably don't look up to snuff isn't that the Game of Thrones doesn't have a budget. It's that look what that budget goes to. A lot of those actors get paid a lot of money. And
that's a good point.
Because they've
far in.
Exactly. And if you think about it, that's why the last 2 seasons they've talked about is they shorten the seasons so they can up the budget per episode so it can be as badass as we want it to be. So I think that it's Game of Thrones, their CG stuff, and Walking Dead, it isn't bad because they would want it to be, obviously. It's just you have a budget, you pick what you want to spend your money on, and obviously the actors are very important. So, like, yeah, our CG isn't going to look fantastic, but it'll look passable. People do deal with it, It's, so.
Yeah.
Also,
I remember them saying the reason we didn't have whose direwolf was it? Was it Jon Snow's direwolf? The reason we didn't have him at the Battle of the Bastards was because we wanted to, put more of our budget into the battle itself or whatever. I'm like, what the fuck? HBO can't pay for you to have the fucking direwolves on the show?
Also, shout out to the author of The Witcher for still being salty as hell towards the video games.
Oh, yeah. So real quick, we'll go over that. So he's basically, what has happened here is he made a one-time deal with CD Projekt to give them rights to The Witcher, right? And essentially what happened is he doesn't get residuals, even though The Witcher has become a huge video game series. And it's totally his fault. You made a bad fucking deal, man. Whoever was your manager
or your lawyer
at that point should just be, taken out back
and
dealt with.
The weirdest thing about that to me is, you could say that like, oh, if only I had invested in Apple 30 years ago or what, right? But this was his baby, his product. You'd think he'd have pride and want to invest in it and want to be.
It's because he didn't understand video games, and he's like, it's whatever. It's not going to do anything.
Exactly. And so now CD Projekt has made The Witcher a Polish national treasure, essentially. Like
it is.
What else comes from Poland?
Yeah, it literally is. Like they've done stuff with the government and stuff to where it's like, officially recognized as being a treasure of Poland for real. And so
that's
he's
awesome.
He's definitely butthurt because the Witcher series has never been more popular than when it was turned into these video games, especially with Witcher 3. And his books are still being translated to English. We don't get the last one until next year, 2018, years and years after it was released in Poland. And he doesn't realize that not only would this series not be being made, half of his books probably wouldn't be in English if it weren't for the fucking game. So he has a lot to thank for CD Projekt, and the fact that he's saying, I hope that they can make a proper adaptation, from the source material, blah, blah, blah. Well, CD Projekt decided to, essentially retcon his ending where Geralt dies and then turn it into Amnesia, and then that way they're not affecting his books when they're telling their story throughout the games. But he didn't like that because they, otherwise they would have just been telling prequel stories or little in-between side stories within his books, and that just wouldn't have worked well, and I think they made the smart decision.
So for clarity too, from what I understand, the author is involved, at least to some extent, with the show.
CD Projekt Red is involved.
But CD Correct, but CD Projekt is not involved with the TV series.
This just shows
right, and that's fine because they're not the fucking stewards of the Witcher series. They're just the guys that adapted it for a video game series.
Also, the other thing is it just shows how salty he is that. We can't put ourselves in his shoes, but for me, if I made that mistake, I would own up to him and be like, yeah, I screwed up, whatever. But at this point, I would want to create a partnership with CD Projekt. If they took what I created and they did what they did with it, even though I kind of screwed out on money, I would still be like, partner with them or like do stuff with them because they are respecting what I created. And from what a lot of Polish people have said, this dude's been a dick forever. So it's just the way the guy is. Oh, yeah.
People... Yeah, way before CD Projekt Red was a thing, or adapting his games, he was an asshole, and that's well documented, about him going to cons and being an ass, or what the fuck ever. He's just been that way for a long time, so that's unfortunate. But I do think CD Projekt has done an incredible job of adapting this series and respected it immensely, and like I said, it wouldn't be shit without them. And I think, even though he's not getting residuals off the game, he's getting all the book sales that happened because of the game, and that's a huge deal. The book covers in America are fucking promo images from the game, so it's like, how do you not get the connection here, dude? How do you not realize that you're, this tide is raising all these ships? So I don't want to focus on that too much. I'm glad you brought it up though, Jared, because that's some pussyfoot shit over there that's going on. But the one thing I wanted to ask real quick, I know we are kind of going long. But real quick, are there any games that you guys really want to get? Let's just say a Netflix series. We're not talking HBO. We're not talking like specifically. You get all of season 1 at one time. It is rated R if it needs to be. It does have the budget and the CG effects that it needs if that's what it requires. What would you guys like?
Do you have any ideas though?
Fallout. I think that's ripe. You could do different seasons in different locations, like one season is DC, or a new place, or whatever. There's just so much there that I would love that, and it would be cool if they did, a lot of CG, or if it was completely animated. I could see some cool stuff with that too, because it's just goofy enough, I think, and I'd love to see that be adapted. It would have to be, like an honest adaptation, like fit the mood where it's serious, but then some weird goofy shit and these funky robots and so on.
For me, there's two things I would really want. The Overwatch cinematics are fantastic.
Fuck, why is that not a thing,
like
Jared?
An Overwatch movie.
Why is there not an animated Overwatch show?
Even just a movie, like a Netflix movie, or even just a movie period, that thing would eat dollars. The other thing, did you guys ever see that Eli Roth Dark Souls short that he made?
No.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it was a promo for DES3.
Yeah, dude, if they made a Dark Souls Netflix series, and obviously it wouldn't be about your character you play as, but the whole story of Dark Souls, all the lore, everything that happens with all of these characters and stuff like that, and they could pick a game, they could pick one of the games, because they're all like multi-universe, the whole lore and theories and crafting, all that stuff, but it could be like kind of like a prequel-esque stuff, or with Gwyn, or any of that stuff. I would love that in that style, specifically of the Eli Roth Dark Souls short. That's what I would want. I didn't want to go too long, but yeah, 100%. It just, I think, really quick before we close up this topic, I think that this is the avenue that's best for video games. Because they are so long, TV treats video games better than a movie does, because you're trying to cram all of this stuff into it. Yeah. And TV and video games kind of go hand in hand of like, there's these quote-unquote filler episodes. There's filler in video games. There's stuff you do in between the big parts.
But remember, this is an adaptation of the books.
Yeah, that is true. That is true. But in the case of you asking us about video games specifically, yeah.
Yes. I did ask you what game you would want to see.
Really quick before we close out, I want to have one answer and two predictions real quick. Are you gonna? This is not for you, Jordan. Obviously, are you watching this day one, Dom? Okay.
Yeah, all episodes. And probably one Sunday.
From both of you guys, how many episodes do you think season 1's gonna be, and when do you think we're getting it?
12 episodes.
10 episodes.
2019.
2019. Fuck. No, I think it'll be out next year. I mean, Netflix gets these things
10 and
out
12,
quick,
we'll see. Mark that in your calendars, boys.
Well, I don't think it's going... I think you're, like, disqualifying yourself saying 12, Dom, because they either do 8, 10, or 13 for Netflix.
Fucking 13. I don't know.
Well, I'm just saying, like the superhero shows are all 13. House of Cards is 13. Orange 12. Is the New Black is 13. No, they're all 13s.
Damn, I thought because I know Better Call Saul. Never mind, that's not Netflix.
Yeah.
I'm gonna stop talking.
Also, Better Call Saul's 10.
Yeah, that's yeah.